I talked over this issue in this corner if you remember. Yesterday was the 33 years anniversary of the JAL Flight 123 crash. It departed from Tokyo bound for Osaka Atami and crashed on the Osataka Mountain, in Gunma Prefecture. Today, for our listeners who missed the last time, first I will briefly summarize what I talked. Actually, I have been in the media for some 20 years, but this matter has always been on my mind with an uncomfortable feeling. The flight departed at 18 p.m. on that day. But after it crashed, the media kept saying the crash site was not identified. One says in Nagano Prefecture, another says another place. It was a complete mess all night long.
Was that so long?
Yes, all night long. Official report says, around 4 o'clock in the next morning, SDF rescue helicopters finally identified the crash site. That is how it was officially announced. But it has already been revealed that that is not true. US Air Forces in Japan precisely identified the crash site right after the crash, and they immediately dispatched rescue aircrafts. But Japanese government said no to the offer of the US Air Forces, saying they wouldn't need help and declined their offer of relief efforts. It was on the day before they identified the site on their own.
Sorry, who declined?
Japanese government.
They told the US Air Forces not to come for rescuing.
Not only that, SDF officially said the crash site was unknown at that moment, but there are many testimonies who witnessed that SDF personnel were climbing the mountain heading for the crash site.
Those testimonies are reliable.
Well, that was a dispute. Official crash report says that was a conspiracy theory. But meanwhile, US Air Forces have admitted that they definitely dispatched rescue aircrafts. So I personally believe that it was impossible for the government to be unaware of the crash site. So what happened actually? Here comes Toko Aoyama, who I introduced in this program last year. She was a flight attendant of Japan Airlines, or stewardess so called in those days. Her colleagues lost their lives, then she started to devote her whole life in investigation of the crash, seeking the truth. She got a doctoral degree from the University of Tokyo. Her approach is scientific. She only writes facts with concrete evidence.
I see.
Last year she published a book titled, New Facts of the JAL123 Crash. In the book she revealed very shocking facts. One example. 2 SDF fighters, Phantoms, were chasing Flight 123 all the way until it crashed in Gunma Prefecture. Another one is, a red flying object was witnessed sticking to the body of the JAL aircraft. I mean, it is a different one from the 2 Phantoms. She seeked and got proof by herself. Then she doesn't conclude in her book, but asserts this. In those days, the SDF was developing domestic missiles. And it is most probable that a non-explosive missile hit the tail fin of Flight 123, leading to the crash.
A missile of the US Air Forces.
This is her hypothesis, not the US, of the SDF. SDF's flying object hit the aircraft's tail fin and that is the cause of the crash. That is the hypothesis made by Aoyama.
That is right. Then in her book, New Facts of the Crash, the most shocking fact is, testimonies by local people. When they reached, the crash site was full of strong odor. Something like a mixture of gasoline and tar. Then flames were burning until the next morning after the crash. This is undoubtful since you can see it in photos. Then she realized there was something unreasonable. Then why did she think so? Autopsy doctors said the victims' bodies were totally carbonized. Officially it is explained they were heavily burned with jet engine fuel, which was splashed around by the shock of the crash. But this is not convincing because jet fuel is almost samely composed of kerosene, that is a non-flammable fuel. The term jet fuel is often misleading. It is a safer fuel.
I see.
Yes. You can imagine, if fuel like gasoline is loaded on an airplane, it is very dangerous in case of an explosion. So they use safer fuel.
Oh, I see.
On top, even if victims get splashed with fuel on a humid summer mountain, is it normal for them to get burned out to total carbonization? It may not be a nice analogy, but when you cook meat, one side is on a wet ground. So if it gets splashed with fuel over the head, it should get burned only on one side. That was what she questioned. Then what material has odor like a mixture of gasoline and tar? Mikami-san also commented earlier, it is flamethrower, that weapon which blows out flames. It has the odor of gasoline and tar. So it is suspected that they burned out the crash site in order to hide the evidence. This was explained in Aoyama's book published last year, which I introduced in this program.
Right, I remember that.
But she went further in her new book published this year. She sought material evidence. Uenomura village, that is where the crash took place, actually there are still remains. Most of them were collected by the government, but they were widely scattered around, then molten metal pieces are still in storage. Then today science technology has advanced, now it is possible to examine the components of the remains by using the latest machines in the laboratory.
Ah, that makes sense.
As a result of her research, she made amazing discoveries. Analyzing the remaining fuel, a large amount of benzene ring was detected as a component.
Benzene ring.
This benzene ring is not included in jet fuel at all. Almost none. On the other hand, gasoline-based fuel comprises it a lot. In other words, she verified a clear fact that something other than jet fuel remained at the crash site. She also analyzed in detail where and how the bodies were spread around on the mountain. Then, this is a creepy fact. Those carbonized bodies were mostly found around the top of the mountain. On the other hand, after the crash, the passengers sitting on the back side of the plane near the tail fin fell down into the bottom of the valley. But they were found without carbonization. A strange thing is, the wings were found there but they should have been splashed with fuel, but they were not scorched. Why? The survivors were also found here, among those who rolled down into the bottom.
Those sitting on the back rows of the plane, right?
Actually, survivors were found by local firefighters, not by SDF. So taking all these facts in account, this is an extremely serious situation, see what I mean. Then, I believe it was high time for the government and Japan Airlines to move again and to reinvestigate what really happened. If not, bereaved people are obliged to stay suffering, and I myself also cannot calm down. I really mean it, I cannot get rid of my creepy feelings. There are so many strange things around this incident. Another example is, the tail fin is still sunk on the seabed of Sagami Bay, at a few hundred meters depth. It is easy to salvage it. But the government keeps rejecting it. And the black box, the whole part of the voice recorder, has not been disclosed until today.
I didn't know that.
That is right. So after all, something is going wrong. I am an economist and only understand the economy well, but in the following month of the crash, that famous Plaza Agreement was made. Then Japan started taking total subordination policies to the United States. So through this incident, Japan owed an extremely large debt to the States. I cannot help thinking that way.
Well, I don't know how they are related to each other, but, sure, somehow the JAL crash, strange.
So people working in the media listening to this program, I would like to ask. The media is staying silent about this issue.
I want to know.
Again, I would like to ask people in the influential media, let us move. I will do everything I can support.